lightning strikes in a bottle.
Then we're going to make ice, right?
Then we're going to make ice.
Then we're going to play overtime. Sudden death overtime.
Harvard pressing in the Minnesota zone. A pass into the slot is not held in. Melrose couldn't keep it in. And time expires. 3 periods have been played. 3 goals have been scored for each team. Harvard 3, Minnesota 3.
Welcome to the top 10 games of the century, presented by Athletic Brewing, where we look back at some of the most exciting and important key wins in Harvard history. At number 2, Harvard men's hockey beats Minnesota in overtime to win the 1989 national championship. Harvard entered the 1989 NCAA tournament with a 27-3 record and a number 2 seed in the East region. After taking down Lake Superior State in the quarterfinals and Michigan State in the semifinals, the Crimson faced off against Minnesota in St. Paul, looking for the program's first national championship.
Welcome back live, everyone, to the St. Paul Civic Center in St. Paul, Minnesota. A sellout crowd for the championship game of collegiate hockey. They're here from Minnesota, even though Minnesota was introduced as the visiting team. They're the lower seed, but they're the home team tonight. There's their goalie, Rob Stauber, on the left, Chucky Hughes, the freshman, and the pressure on those two, Bob Johnson, has to be immense.
Well, I'll tell you, we're down to playoff hockey. It's goaltending and special teams, and this is what it's all about. This is what these teams have been practicing all year. They started last fall.
Steve Petrosky out of the CCHA, and the opening faceoff were underway. The puck comes immediately back into the Harvard zone. Motors the puck up into the center ice.
In front of a partisan crowd, Minnesota scored first, 6:24 in, as John Anderson put the Gophers ahead 1-0.
And a score by John Anderson!
He got 3 last night, and all of a sudden, a walk-on here in the University of Minnesota.
You know, Anderson said in the papers this morning after last night's hat trick, he couldn't imagine a bigger moment in his career. I think he just imagined one. A lot of physical play early on.
Well, that's called intensity. I mean, these players this is the biggest game of their careers right here. They're going to go in that corner.
The penalty kill loomed large to hold the Crimson deficit at 1, as Harvard killed off 3 penalties over the last 7 minutes of the first period to send the game to the second at 1-0 Minnesota.
Bull just tomahawking down the ice, and Minnesota over 3 in the power play.
Well, we talked about at the start of the show is special teams is a key thing in goaltending, and Minnesota's really had 3 great opportunities. They were better that time in the power play, but they've only got 1 goal.
2 seconds, 1, and that's the end of the first period. With the score, Minnesota 1 and Harvard nothing. Rob Stauber takes a well-deserved drink at the end of the period. How would you characterize the play?
Well, I think everything we expected we saw.
So 1-0 the advantage for Minnesota, but is it that much of an advantage, Rob Johnson, in an NCAA championship?
Well, one thing about Harvard, they've only lost 3 games all year. They've had to lead a lot, but when they've been behind, they've always had the ability to come back.
That's right. Snuggerud controls the opening faceoff. With it is Tom Peterson, number 7, sophomore out of Dedham, Massachusetts. Excellent season, 49 points.
6 minutes into the second period, future Harvard head coach Ted Donato leveled the score with his first goal of the game, converting on the power play to tie the game at 1.
Giving to Bourbeau, back to Donato, the shot, he scores! Teddy Donato from the right face-off circle with a bullet blast.
Four minutes later, the Crimson took their first lead on an even-strength goal from Lane McDonald.
Here comes Lane McDonald for Harvard, right in front. He shoots, he scores!
You know, Tom, that's the one thing that Lane McDonald can do. He can accelerate.
In the Minnesota power play, they're 0 for 3 tonight. From the slot, the shot in front is a save, the rebound is a score!
Harvard's lead didn't last for long. Less than 4 minutes later, the Gophers equalized on a power play goal from Jason Miller, and the teams headed to the third period tied at 2.
And that should about do it for the second period of play. 2-1, that's it.
Well, Tom, we started with 60 minutes, and now it's a 20-minute hockey game.
You look at the stats, you couldn't draw up more even comparisons between these two teams. And it's the oldest of cliches, but somebody's going to lose this, and it's going to be a heartbreaking defeat. Penalty to Kaplan to kill. Minnesota opens on the power play. We're tied at 2 in hockey's national title game. Third period underway. Telecast from St. Paul, Harvard and Minnesota tied at 2 into the third period of the hockey national championship game. This is Hartje at center ice. Hart to John Anderson, who has a goal this evening. Snuggerud. Here's Snuggerud and a pad save.
The game stayed tied at 2-2 through the first half of the third period. With less than 8 minutes to go, Donato, who'd later be named the tournament most outstanding player, scored again to put Harvard on top 3-2.
The rebound, he scores! Ted Donato put Harvard in the lead. 4 minutes separate the Harvard Crimson from their first national championship. Think about this, in any sport ever, an NCAA competition.
With less than 4 minutes to play, mounting a furious charge, Minnesota tied the score on the power play with Peter Hankinson lighting the lamp.
Back to Peterson, the shot, Hughes, they score! Power play. Unless lightning strikes in a bottle.
Then we're going to make ice, right?
Then we're going to make ice.
Then we're going to play overtime. Sudden death overtime.
Harvard pressing in the Minnesota zone. A pass into the slot is not held in. Melrose couldn't keep it in. And time expires. 3 periods have been played. 3 goals have been scored for each team. Harvard 3, Minnesota 3. Peter Hankinson tying it up late for Minnesota. And a face-off will play 10 minutes. If it's still tied after 10 minutes, the teams will take a short timeout and the goaltenders will change hands. In the red and white uniforms to C.J. Young to Lane McDonald. Lane McDonald with a shot.
The game stretched to overtime, and Harvard pushed the pace toward the Gopher end.
He gives it back to number 6, Teddy Donato, has 2 of the 3 Harvard goals. Pitlick is met by C.J. Young, and a nice play by Young to keep it deep in the Minnesota zone. That is Harvard coach Bill Cleary.
After a scrum around net, Ed Crayer spotted the loose puck in front and stuck it into the back of the net to deliver the Crimson their first national championship.
The side of the basketball semifinals following this hockey game. The shot by McCormick is down in front. They score! Harvard wins the national championship!
Harvard's stellar 1989 season still stands as a shining achievement of the Crimson hockey program and cemented legendary head coach Bill Cleary's legacy as one of college hockey's top coaches. Join us next week for the #1 game in the list of Harvard top 10 games of the century.